Rwanda, one of the world's cleanest nations, Africa's third fastest growing economy, world's highest representation of women in parliament, shirt sponsor of leading European soccer clubs, often flaunted as the Singapore of Africa, yet just 30 years ago, the small landlocked country just survived the horrific genocide. What explains this ultimate grass-to-grace picture? This episode of Capital Secrets leaves no stone unturned. The year 1994 goes down as Rwanda's turning point in history. The country suffered one of the most horrific genocides ever recorded in the entire global history. In only 100 days, 800,000 people were killed in the midst of this ethnic conflict. The group primarily targeted the Tutsi, saw the loss of about 75% of its population. With time though, the country emerged from the other end, peace prevailed, and its indicators began their steady climb upwards to where they are today. For every 100,000 residents, Rwanda has on average only 2.5 murders per year. As a point of comparison, that's lower than India's 3.2 or the US's 5.4. In addition, Rwanda is ranked the 48th least corrupt country in the world. That's not perfect, but on the continent, only Botswana and Seychelles, which are far richer countries, rank higher. It is now the 15th fastest growing economy in the world and pursuing a clearly defined mission. They want to become the Singapore of Africa. To understand what this means though, you have to understand what Singapore is. Singapore sits at the top of all the indicators, not just for Asia, but the world. It's the 8th safest, 6th richest, 3rd least corrupt, and the 3rd longest living country in the world. 60 years ago, in 1960s, Singapore's economy had a size of about $700 million. Today, that number is $320 billion. In the last 10 years alone, its GDP has doubled. It went from a definitively third world country to a definitively first world country in less than a lifetime. They have done the near impossible. Some of the ways that Singapore has achieved this growth though has met some criticism. Particular criticism is directed towards its political governance. It's not quite authoritarian, but some freedoms are lacking. To this, proponents would say, look at the results. Rwanda has been paying attention. Paul Kagame, its president, declared that mission to turn the country into the Singapore of Africa, and in many ways, it's already well on its way. Singapore's success as a business hub can be attributed to 3 factors: geographic centrality, political stability, and the ease of doing business. One of Singapore's largest companies is the Singapore Airlines, often considered one of the best airlines in the world. Thanks to this airline, one can get from Singapore to 5 different continents in a matter of hours. Rwanda has clearly noticed this. Their national airline, Rwanda Air, which is government-owned, has grown from a tiny operation with a few regional jets to a significant intercontinental airline operating brand new planes. They now fly all around Africa to Dubai, Brussels, and London. While the airline is not yet near at the level of some larger players on the continent like Ethiopian Airlines and South Africa Airways, it's serving its job effectively of connecting Rwanda to the world. The second factor to Singapore's economic success is political stability. The World Bank rates countries in terms of political stability and the absence of violence and terrorism, and for this, Singapore, unsurprisingly, comes up in the 99th percentile, better than almost any other country in the world. Rwanda sits at the 48th percentile for this political stability indicator, well in the middle of the pack. This isn't phenomenal, but compared to the sub-Saharan average of 31, it's doing alright. However, the test of whether this country is truly stable or rather in a state of temporary fear-based obedience has not yet come. Rwanda has not experienced a power transition since 2000, and nobody really knows whether the country can continue on the right path after Kagame leaves. Regardless of the reasons, though, for Rwanda's current political stability, it's sure that businesses like it. It's one of the top factors they look at when deciding which countries to operate in. The third factor that led to Singapore's business success, ease of doing business, is perhaps the most important one and also the one at which Rwanda most excels. This is a broad factor, but it's one that the World Bank tracks with a well-known indicator, the Ease of Doing Business Index. This looks at 10 factors: ease of starting a business, dealing with construction permits, getting electricity, registering property, getting credit, protecting minority investors, paying taxes, trading across borders, enforcing contracts, and resolving insolvency. Singapore ranks as number 2 in the world, behind New Zealand, and is followed up by Denmark, Hong Kong, and South Korea. Rwanda, meanwhile, scores as the 29. This is an impressive score by itself, but it is incredibly impressive when considering how the rest of the continent ranks up. Rwanda is by far the highest ranked among mainland African nations. The nearest trailing African nation is Morocco at number 60, and plenty of developed countries like the Netherlands, Switzerland, and Japan rank lower than Rwanda. To achieve this, Rwanda has made plenty of economic and legislative reforms to foster the business-friendly environment. They've also been focusing on building both soft and hard infrastructure. The government, in collaboration with private investors, built an enormous $300 million convention center along with a 5-star Radisson Blu hotel to attract the convention market, in addition to less flashy infrastructure projects, building roads and airports. Overall, Rwanda is on the hunt for international investment in the country, and so far that's paid off. In 2005, $10.5 million were invested from abroad in Rwanda. In 2017, that number was $293 million. Clearly, a lot is working in Rwanda. It's safe, clean, and growing economically. What more could a country want? Well, there are serious questions from abroad on whether Rwanda's growth is ethical, replicable, sustainable, and even real. The way Rwanda has achieved its current stability and growth have some external observers condemning it. Appearances of Rwanda can also be deceiving. It is still one of the poorest countries in the world, with a per capita income of a paltry $750 a year. Some question whether the country should be spending so much on its airline, its infrastructure, and its capital when so many in the country are so poor. Some question whether the country is growing for its middle and upper class while leaving its rural poor behind. It's no surprise, though, that many of the country's neighbors, curbed by violence and poverty, have pondered whether they should be replicating the ways of Kagame. Some say the current regime is solely focused on making things seem like they are improving through climbing up the indicators without making real rational change. There are even some accusations that Rwandan GDP growth figures might be inflated or otherwise manipulated. It's sure that Rwanda has been growing enormously, but is it really this much? Let us know your thoughts about this in the comments section. I am Sammy G. Galandi with high hopes